Greetings, YouTube. It's Bo Spira, the weirdest guy on YouTube and possibly the internet, and I wanted to weigh in on the whole social distancing situation at the moment. Some people are saying end the lockdowns, others are saying continue them, and at the moment, conditionally, I err on the side of continuing them, and I'll explain why. There are plenty of people turning around and saying, look, we're losing our livelihoods, this will risk a depression. Absolutely true. There are plenty of people saying that there are serious numbers of asymptomatic cases based on the research. Absolutely true. However, there are two things that I see as being a problem here. First, in my own experiences doing essential shopping, people are idiots. Oh, I just need to put this back here, sorry. Oh, I'm in a rush. Oh, I'm just doing this. Oh, I'm just doing that. All to get around keeping 1.5 meters of distance, which is the Australian standard. I mean, at the end of the day, pandemics do not give a rat's ass about your schedules, about you needing to put things back, and seriously, you cannot wait 2 minutes or 5 minutes. The other day in a supermarket, well, in a department store actually, I was in a situation where I needed a gap. I got in the service queue and waited 5 minutes to get out of the store. Why? Because that is what social distancing mandates. And the reality is that I might be fine, you might be fine, the next person might be fine. It might be fine 5 times down the chain. But that 6th person winds up working in aged care, winds up working in hospital, and the 7th person is elderly or immunocompromised. Suddenly they're on a ventilator or worse. The reality is we need to keep the lockdowns going because people are idiots. Period. And until people start to realize that Mother Nature doesn't give a rat's ass about where you need to be, about what you need to put back, about the fact that you can't be fucking bothered to walk backwards, around, etc., to stay 1.5 fucking meters away from everyone, because the person down the supply chain who might not have the immune system you do, the very fact that people are self-entitled children with their heads firmly up their fucking asses is the reason that people cannot be trusted to let these restrictions lapse. If people started acting like adults who are taking this thing seriously and giving a shit about the people who might be affected down the train rather than just themselves, then yes, as a society, we could be trusted not to have the government acting like a pack of frickin' nanny staters. But while we are acting like children, we need to be treated like children. End of story. If you don't like that and you're one of the people doing it, grow the fuck up. That leads me to my second point. Yes, we know these cases are asymptomatic. But the fact of the matter is, we are not doing antibody testing anywhere near as much as we should be. If we want to open things up and we want to create these potential infection chains, we need to know what we're dealing with. We know that fatality rates differ between nations. But what do they differ by? What are the numbers of asymptomatic cases? We know as a general rule that out of symptomatic cases, about 20% are going to develop viral pneumonia. About 5% are going to be critical. We know that about 10% of all cases are going to need a ventilator. We know that the moment the hospital system becomes overrun, you go from a death rate of a little over 2%, or roughly half of all the critical cases, to death rates which skyrocket over 10%. We have a 25% fatality rate when you look at the recovered cases versus those who died. Now, if we're going to turn around and say, look, we have a 90% rate of asymptomatic cases, great. That drops what we need to deal with down to 2% of all cases developing viral pneumonia, 1% of all cases needing a ventilator, 5% of all cases being critical. When we have that information, we can say, okay, we need to put things in place for those people. Because I'm sorry, I'm not going to fucking put up with this whole fucking stupid notion of they're just boomers and treat it like a fucking boomer remover. It's not fucking good enough. I don't like Soylent Green as a dietary idea. I don't fucking want it as a reality. End of story. One person dying from this is too many. And if we're going to open things back up, we need to make damn sure that we have the medical resources in place to deal with those numbers we are going to get. Now, if that's 50% of your population that's only asymptomatic, you need to deal with the fact that 50% of your cases are going to be symptomatic. You need the resources in place. If it's 20%, if it's 10%, whatever. Put those resources in place and fine, I will happily support opening things up, because the reality is that people out there are idiots, they can't be trusted, and you are going to get second waves of infection because people are too fucking stupid and self-absorbed to think about other people. A pandemic hasn't brought out the best in us at all. At all. It just hasn't. So we need to allow for a second wave of infections. We need to allow for whatever that's going to be. We need to look at the numbers of symptomatic cases, plan around it, and maybe put in a 10% redundancy rate. Have the ventilators we need. Have the hydroxychloroquine we need, provided that the studies turn out to be 100% accurate, that it does resolve in 90% of cases. And heck, even have doctors prescribing it. So at the end of the day, if it's going to cause side effects, if it's going to cause death, doctors can turn around and say, sorry, this is not going to work. We need a plan B. Have that in place. Have staff trained to diagnose, to treat. Heck, train up paramedics, train up the police. Have the military doing it. We're not fighting a war except on a pandemic at the moment, so let's use our soldiers for that. We can be doing these things. We can be putting these things in place so we can remove the lockdowns. But while people continue to be idiots, and while we don't know exactly what resources we need and allow for them, we're not in the place to lift the lockdowns. And I agree people are hurting. I agree that we are dealing with economic catastrophe in the form of quite possibly a global depression out of this. That is not lost on me. But human lives have to come first. And if we are going to resolve this, we need to do both. And there is no reason we can't do both. Run antibody studies in every single country using reliable test kits so you can turn around and say, okay, this number of people estimated are going to be asymptomatic carriers. Allow for 80 to 90% of the population to get it. This is well and truly shaping up to have Event 201's CAPS model's transmission period. The thing is even more contagious than that was, and that model had 80 to 90% of people getting it. Allow for 80 to 90%. Then know what your asymptomatic cases are. Work out from that what percentage of the population is going to be symptomatic, what percentage of that is going to have complications, and what percentage of that are going to have life-threatening complications. Build in a 10% buffer, get the supplies there, then open everything back up. It's not frickin' rocket science. For everyone going, open up, we need our livelihoods. Put pressure on your governments to make sure that everything is covered and the insurance policy is there. For everyone saying, keep it closed up indefinitely and ignore the economic prospects, tell that to the 150 million people who are estimated to be going to be dying of hunger because food shipments have stopped to the third world. We need to be doing both. We need to be doing better, and people need to pull their heads out of their fucking asses when doing their bit. And I'm not going to apologize for being harsh on that, because at the end of the day, there are lives of the vulnerable at stake, and that is what matters most. That be they economically vulnerable or be they physiologically vulnerable. And that is all that matters. Until next time, folks, be kind to each other. You deserve it.